The sky above was a dull gray, thick cloud swirling like smoke. The wind howled through the barren landscape, picking up dust and sand, making it hard to see. The planet was cold, lifeless, and hostile, and the small group of aliens knew they had been left to die. There were 5 of them, members of a peaceful race called the Tarvians. Their skin was pale, almost translucent, and their large black eyes reflected the harsh light of the planet's distant sun. They had once lived on a beautiful, thriving planet full of life, but now, all that seemed like a distant memory. Their enemies, a ruthless and powerful species known as the Krell, had captured them during a battle and left them here on this desolate world with no way to escape. Kral, the leader of the group, looked at his companions, their faces filled with fear and hopelessness. Their supplies were almost gone, and their chances of survival were growing slimmer by the hour. They had tried to send a distress signal using their ship's radio, but the Krell had destroyed it before abandoning them. Now all they could do was wait for their slow and certain death on this cruel planet. The ground beneath their feet was rocky and uneven, and the air was thin and cold, making it hard to breathe. They had set up a small camp near a cave they found, using it as shelter from the biting winds. But even inside the cave, the cold was unbearable. Kivrel felt it deep in his bones, a constant reminder of how weak and helpless they were here. "We cannot stay here much longer," said Lyra, one of the younger Tarvians. Her voice trembled with fear as she wrapped her thin arms around herself, shivering from the cold. "We'll run out of food soon." And then, she didn't finish her sentence, but everyone knew what she meant. They would starve if the cold didn't kill them first. Kivrel nodded grimly. He knew the situation was dire, but he had to stay strong for the others. "We will find a way," he said, though even he wasn't sure how much longer they could last. "We just need to keep moving, keep searching for something, anything that can help us." But in his heart, Kivrel knew there was little hope. This planet was barren, with no signs of life or resources they could use. They had walked for miles in every direction from their camp, only to find more rocks, sand, and endless stretches of wasteland. The skies above were always dark, as if the sun itself had abandoned this place. The Krell had chosen this planet for a reason. They knew it was uninhabitable, a place where no one could survive for long. It was their way of making sure the Tarvians never posed a threat to them again. The Krell didn't even bother to kill them directly. They let the planet do it for them. As Kavral looked out over the empty landscape, he couldn't help but think about his people back home. The Tarvians had always been a peaceful race, avoiding conflict and war. They believed in unity, in helping each other, and protecting their world. But when the Krell attacked, they weren't prepared for the kind of violence that followed. Their advanced technology wasn't enough to stop the Krell's brute force. Now they were here, on a forgotten planet, with no hope of rescue. Suddenly, a loud noise broke the silence, echoing through the air. It was the sound of something flying overhead, something that didn't belong to this dead world. Kivral's heart raced as he looked up, squinting through the dust-filled air. At first, he thought it was one of the Krell's ships coming back to finish them off. But the shape was different. It was smaller, sleeker, and moved in a way that Krell ships didn't. The others noticed it too, stepping out of the cave to look at the sky. Their eyes widened in disbelief as the ship descended slowly, landing not far from their camp. Could it be? Lyra whispered, her voice filled with both fear and hope. Krell didn't know, but one thing was clear. Whoever or whatever was inside that ship would either be their salvation or their doom. As the ship's door opened, Kivrel stepped forward cautiously, ready to face whatever came next. They had been left to die on this planet, but perhaps, just perhaps, their fate was about to change. The humans' arrival. The ship's door opened with a soft hiss, and Kivrel held his breath. The wind howled around them, carrying dust and sand, making it hard to see. He could feel the tension in the air as the others stood behind him. waiting for whatever would step out of the ship. Was it the Krell, coming to finish what they started? Or was it someone else? Slowly, a figure emerged from the ship, stepping out onto the rocky ground. Kavral's large black eyes widened. It wasn't a Krell. It was something different, something he had only heard about in stories and legends. It was a human. The human was tall, wearing a dark suit that covered most of his body. A helmet hid his face, but Kivral could see through the visor. This was definitely a human. His movements were calm, not threatening, and he carried no visible weapons. He paused for a moment, looking at the group of aliens standing in front of the cave. The Tarvians didn't know what to do. They had heard stories about humans. Some said they were fierce warriors. Others said they were clever and cunning, always looking out for themselves. But no one had ever really met one before. Kivral had never expected to meet a human, especially not on a planet like this. The human raised one hand slowly, palm facing forward. It was a gesture of peace. Kivral felt his heart pound in his chest. He didn't know if he could trust this stranger, but right now, they had no other options. The planet had left them with nothing, and this human, whoever he was, might be their only chance. The human spoke, his voice muffled by the helmet. "I come in peace. My name is Jack Stenson, an explorer. I mean no harm." Kivral exchanged a glance with Lyra and the others. None of them knew what to make of this. Should they trust him? But Jack didn't seem dangerous, and his voice carried a tone of calmness, almost kindness. After a few moments of silence, Kivral stepped forward cautiously. "I am Kivral, leader of this group. We are the Tarvians, and we have been stranded here. Why have you come?" Jack took a step closer but kept a respectful distance. "I was exploring this sector of space when I detected life signs on this planet. I didn't expect to find anyone here. This world is unforgiving. But when I saw you, I had to land. I thought you might need help." The wind blew harder for a moment, and Kivral wrapped his cloak tighter around himself. The others were still watching, their faces full of uncertainty. Could they really trust this human? Could his arrival be some kind of trick? But Jack's words sounded sincere. His body language was relaxed, and there was no sign of aggression. He stood there, waiting patiently, giving them time to make a decision. Lyra, the youngest of the group, stepped forward slightly. You want to help us?" she asked, her voice trembling. "But why? You don't even know us." Jack turned his head toward her, his helmet still reflecting the dull light of the cloudy sky. "Because it's the right thing to do," he replied simply. "I can't just leave you here to die. I'm human, and humans believe in helping those in need." Kivral wasn't sure if he believed that. From what he knew, humans were unpredictable, sometimes ruthless. But something about Jack seemed different. Maybe it was the way he spoke, or the way he stood there without fear or judgment. He didn't act like an enemy, and there was something oddly comforting in his presence. Still, Kivral couldn't let his guard down just yet. "We are in a difficult situation," he said carefully. "Our ship was destroyed, and we have no way to leave this planet. Our supplies are almost gone. Why would you risk helping us when you gain nothing from it?" Jack took a deep breath, the wind making the sound of his breathing faintly audible through his helmet. "I don't expect anything in return. I've got food, water, and tools. I can help you fix whatever you need. I don't believe in leaving people behind, no matter where they're from." The Tarvians were silent for a long moment. Kivral's mind raced. This human seemed to be offering them everything they needed: food, water, and maybe even a way off the planet. But could it really be that simple? Could they truly trust him? Finally, Kivral made his decision. "We will accept your help, Jack Stenson. But know this, if you betray us, we will not forget it." Jack nodded. "Understood. But I think you'll find I'm not the betraying type." With that, he reached into his pack and pulled out a small container, offering it to Kivral. "Here, it's food. It's not much, but it'll help for now. I've got more on my ship. Cavrel hesitated only for a moment before taking the container. The others gathered around, curious but still wary. As Jack stepped back toward his ship to gather more supplies, Cavrel couldn't help but feel that something had shifted. For the first time in days, there was a flicker of hope. The first act of help. Jack Stenson walked back to his ship, feeling the cold wind bite at his face through his helmet. The planet's air was thin, and he could feel the chill creeping through his suit. He didn't know much about these aliens, the Tarvians, but he could see they were in bad shape. Their pale skin seemed almost transparent, and the way they moved showed they were weak, probably from lack of food and water. Jack had to act fast if they were going to survive. Inside his ship, Jack rummaged through his supplies. He had enough food and water for himself, but helping the Tarigians meant sharing everything. He didn't mind. It was part of who he was. He couldn't just leave them out there to die. He packed a few more containers of food and water, grabbed his toolkit, and stepped back outside. As Jack walked toward the cave where the Tarivians had set up their camp, he noticed them watching him closely. Their leader, Cavrel, stood at the entrance, his black eyes filled with suspicion, but also something else. Hope. Jack could feel it. These aliens were on the brink of giving up, but they hadn't yet. "I brought more supplies," Jack said, holding out the containers. Cavrel hesitated for a moment, then stepped forward and took the food and water from Jack. The other Tarivians gathered around, their eyes wide as Cavrel opened the containers and handed out the rations. The group ate slowly, savoring each bite, as if they hadn't eaten in days. Jack felt a sense of relief wash over him. At least they would be able to hold on a little longer now. "Thank you," Cavrel said, his voice quiet but sincere. "We were almost out of food. We didn't expect anyone to come. We thought this planet was the end for us." Jack nodded. "I couldn't leave you here. No one deserves to die like this." As the aliens ate, Jack noticed something else. A damaged communication device near the back of the cave. It looked like it had been smashed, maybe during a fight, or when the Krell had abandoned them. Jack's mind started working immediately. If he could fix that radio, they might be able to send a distress signal and get rescued. "You've got a radio," Jack said, walking over to the device. "But it's broken." Cavrel glanced at the radio and nodded. "Yes. The Krell destroyed it before they left us. We've tried to fix it, but none of us know how." Jack knelt down and opened his toolkit. "I might be able to help with that." The Tarvians watched in silence as Jack began working on the radio. His hands moved quickly, expertly, as he took apart the damaged components and started replacing them with parts from his own ship. It wasn't an easy fix, but Jack had always been good at figuring things out. It was one of the reasons he became an explorer. He loved solving problems. Time passed, and the wind outside the cave grew louder, but Jack stayed focused on the task in front of him. He worked for hours, only stopping once to drink some water. The Tarivians didn't say much, but Jack could feel their eyes on him, waiting, hoping. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Jack tightened the last screw and stepped back. "There," he said, wiping the sweat from his forehead. "Try it now." Cavrel walked over to the radio, his hands trembling slightly. He pressed a button, and to everyone's surprise, the device crackled to life. A faint signal came through, and the Tarvians gasped in disbelief. They had thought the radio was beyond repair, but Jack had done it. He had given them a chance. "It's working," Cavrel whispered, his voice filled with awe. You fixed it." Jack smiled. "It's not a strong signal, but it'll do for now. You should be able to send a message and call for help." The other Tarivians gathered around, their faces full of gratitude. For the first time in days, they felt something they had lost: hope. Jack had not only given them food and water, but he had also given them a chance to be saved. And he had done it all without asking for anything in return. Coverell looked at Jack, his eyes softening. "You didn't have to do this," he said. "Why are you helping us? What do you want from us?" Jack shook his head. "I don't want anything. Helping others is what humans do. We don't leave people behind." Coverell stared at Jack for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "I didn't know humans were like this. We've heard stories, but you're different." Jack chuckled. "Humans can be a little rough around the edges, but most of us are just trying to do the right thing." As the Taravians huddled together, whispering among themselves, Jack knew that his simple act of kindness had done more than just fix a radio. It had sparked something in these aliens, something that would help them survive, even in the face of impossible odds. Facing the planet's dangers. The planet was far from safe. Jack had seen hostile environments before, but this world seemed determined to make survival impossible. The temperature dropped sharply as night approached, and the wind howled through the rocky landscape like a wild beast. The Taravians huddled together in their cave, trying to stay warm, but Jack knew the real danger wasn't the cold. It was what lived out there, in the dark. He had seen signs of movement earlier, while he was repairing the radio. Large tracks in the sand, too big to be made by any ordinary animal. He didn't mention it to the others right away, not wanting to alarm them. But now, as the sky turned black and the wind grew louder, he knew it was time to prepare. "We need to set up defenses," Jack said, breaking the uneasy silence inside the cave. Coverell looked up from where he was sitting, a worried expression on his face. "Defenses? Against what?" Jack hesitated, then pointed outside, toward the wide expanse of rocky terrain. "There's something out there. I saw tracks. Big ones." The other Taravians shifted uncomfortably, exchanging nervous glances. Lyra, the youngest of the group, looked especially frightened. "What kind of creature lives here?" she asked, her voice shaking. "I don't know," Jack admitted, "but whatever it is, it's big. And hungry, I'm guessing." Coverell stood up, his face grim. "We have no weapons," he said. "We are not fighters. If something attacks us, how can we defend ourselves?" Jack thought for a moment, then grabbed his toolkit. "We don't need weapons to protect ourselves. We just need to be smart." He led the group outside, where the wind whipped at their clothes and made it hard to hear. Jack scanned the area, looking for anything they could use. The landscape was harsh, with jagged rocks and steep cliffs surrounding them. Then an idea hit him. "We can use the rocks," Jack said. "We'll set up a barrier around the entrance to the cave. If anything tries to get in, it'll have to go through the rocks first. We can slow it down, maybe even trap it." The Taravians, still unsure, followed Jack's lead. Together, they gathered as many loose rocks and boulders as they could find, piling them up near the mouth of the cave. It was hard work, especially with the cold biting at their skin, but they kept going. Jack worked alongside them, his strength and determination giving the Taravians the motivation they needed to push through. By the time they finished, the barrier was tall and sturdy, blocking most of the entrance to the cave. Jack stood back, wiping sweat from his brow despite the cold. "That should help," he said. "It's not perfect, but it'll give us some time if something tries to attack." Coverell nodded, looking at the barrier with a mixture of relief and doubt. "I hope it's enough," he said softly. The night settled in, and the group retreated back into the cave. The wind howled louder, and strange noises echoed from the darkness outside, low growls and distant roars that made the Taravians huddle closer together. Jack sat near the entrance, keeping watch, his hand resting on a makeshift spear he had crafted from a sharp rock and a piece of metal from his ship. Hours passed, and the tension in the cave grew heavier with every strange sound from the outside. Just when Jack started to think they might make it through the night without trouble, a loud crash echoed from outside. The Taravians jumped to their feet, their eyes wide with fear. Jack rushed to the entrance, peering through a small gap in the rock barrier. His heart raced as he saw a massive shadow moving in the distance, coming closer. It was huge, at least 3 times the size of a human, with long, clawed limbs and glowing eyes that cut through the darkness. The creature snarled, sniffing the air, as it moved toward the cave. It had smelled them, and now it was hunting. "Stay back," Jack whispered sharply to the others. "Don't make any noise." The creature reached the barrier and growled, sniffing the rocks. It was looking for a way in. Jack gripped his spear tighter, knowing that if it broke through, they'd have little chance of stopping it. But the rocks held, at least for now. The creature growled again, frustrated, and then slammed its massive body against the barrier. The rocks shook, but they didn't collapse. The Taravians held their breath, their hearts pounding in their chests. For a moment, it seemed like the barrier might hold. But then, with a deafening roar, the creature slammed into the rocks again, harder this time. One of the larger stones shifted, and Jack knew they couldn't hold it off much longer. He turned to the group. "When it breaks through, we run. Head for the cliffs to the east. There's a narrow passage there. It's too big to follow us through. I'll hold it off as long as I can." The Taravians looked at him with wide eyes, but they nodded. They had no other choice. The creature slammed into the barrier one last time, and the rocks gave way with a loud crash. Jack stood his ground, his spear ready, as the creature lunged forward, its glowing eyes locked on him. New friendship and shared stories. The creature charged into the cave, its massive claws ripping through the remains of the rocky barrier like it was made of paper. Jack braced himself, ready to fight, but just as the creature lunged at him, a sudden flash of movement caught his eye. Kivral, the Taravian leader, stepped forward, his body tense with determination. "Wait," Kivral shouted. "We don't have to fight." Jack hesitated, his spear poised to strike. "What are you doing?" he hissed. "Get back." But Kivral didn't back down. Instead, he stood tall, looking straight at the creature. "Listen to me. We are not your enemies." The creature paused, its glowing eyes shifting from Jack to Kivral. It growled softly, unsure of what to do. Jack was amazed. How could Kivral be so brave? Most beings would have run away in fear. Kivral took a deep breath, trying to show the creature he meant no harm. "We are lost and hungry. We only want to survive. We don't want to fight you. Please, let us be." For a moment, the cave was filled with silence. The creature stared at Kivral, then tilted its head, as if trying to understand the alien's words. Jack watched in awe, lowering his spear slightly. Could it be that Kivral was right? Was there a chance for peace? Slowly, the creature stepped back, sniffing the air cautiously. It seemed to sense the tension in the cave, and was now more curious than aggressive. Jack felt a wave of relief wash over him, but he still kept his spear ready, just in case. Kivral took another step forward, still keeping his hands open and relaxed. "We can help each other," he continued. "You are strong and powerful. We are weak and in need. If you let us live, we will find food for you." The creature's growl softened, its posture relaxing. It took a few cautious steps forward, moving closer to Kivral. Jack's heart raced as he watched this unexpected connection unfold. Maybe they could find a way to coexist after all. Finally, the creature let out a low, rumbling sound that echoed through the cave. It wasn't a growl. It was more like a sigh. Jack didn't know what it meant, but Kivral seemed to understand. "See," he said softly to Jack. "It's listening." The creature lowered its massive head, allowing Kivral to reach out and touch its rough skin. The moment their hands met, something magical happened. The creature let out a low, melodic sound that filled the cave with warmth. Jack couldn't believe what he was seeing. As Kivral stood there, connecting with the creature, Jack felt a sense of hope. If they could build a friendship with this being, maybe they could survive after all. Once the initial tension had passed, Kivral turned back to Jack. "This is a new beginning," he said, a smile breaking across his face. "We can learn from each other." Jack nodded. feeling the weight of the world lift from his shoulders. Yes, but we need to find a way to communicate. We have to understand what it wants and how we can help each other. The creature stood beside Kivral, its massive body towering over him. Jack watched in awe as Kivral continued to stroke the creature's rough skin, speaking to it softly. It was a sight he never thought he would see, a Tarvian befriending a creature that had once seemed so terrifying. As the night wore on, the atmosphere in the cave changed. The group felt a new sense of unity, and Jack took the opportunity to sit down and share his stories with the Tarvians. They gathered around him, eager to hear about his life, the stars he had seen, and the places he had traveled. "I've been to worlds with oceans that sparkle like diamonds," Jack began. "I've met creatures that could sing, and I'd walked on planets with 3 suns. But no place is like this, where you can make a friend in the middle of danger." The Tarvians listened intently, their eyes wide with wonder. They had never traveled far from their own planet, and Jack's stories opened up a new world for them. Kivral asked questions, fascinated by the tales of humans and their adventures. "And what about your people?" Jack asked, turning the conversation around. "What are Tarvians like? What is your home like?" Kivral thought for a moment. "Our home is a beautiful place, filled with rivers and trees that reach the sky. We live in harmony with nature, but we are not warriors. We prefer peace. That is why we were so scared of the Krell. They are not like us." Lyra, the youngest Tarvian, piped up. "Do humans have stories like yours? Stories of great heroes?" Jack smiled, thinking back to all the stories he had heard growing up. "Yes, we do. We have tales of bravery and friendship, just like what we are experiencing now. Heroes who stand up for others, who fight for what is right." Kivral nodded, looking at the creature now resting peacefully beside him. "Maybe this creature is a hero in its own way. It has shown us that we can change the way we see the world." As the night wore on, the group continued to share stories, laughter echoing through the cave. The creature settled down, curling up near Kivral and the others, becoming part of their newfound family. In that moment, amidst the dangers of the planet, they found warmth in their shared experiences and dreams for a better future. Planning their escape, as the first light of dawn broke over the horizon, the cave slowly filled with a warm golden glow. Jack woke up feeling more hopeful than he had in days. The creature, now affectionately named Thar, lay curled up near Kivral and the other Tarvians, its breathing calm and steady. The bond they had formed was unexpected but powerful. They all knew that if they were going to survive, they needed to work together. Kivral stretched and looked at Jack. "What is our plan for today?" he asked, his voice steady and strong. Jack nodded, rubbing the sleep from his eyes. "We need to find a way off this planet. We need to get to my ship, and I have an idea on how to do it." The Tarvians gathered around, their interest piqued. Lyra was especially eager, her bright eyes shining with excitement. "What do we need to do?" she asked. "First, we need to gather supplies," Jack explained. "We can't leave without enough food and water. We also need to check the area around the cave for any threats. Once we are prepared, we can make our way to the ship." Kivral agreed, his expression serious. "We can help gather food and scout the area. Thar can help us too. Its strength will be useful." Jack smiled, feeling a sense of camaraderie growing among them. "Yes, Thar can be our protector. With it by our side, we will be safer." The group quickly set to work. Jack led the way, carefully moving out of the cave and into the open. The morning air was crisp, and the sun shone brightly in the sky. They headed toward a nearby stream that Jack had spotted the day before. The water looked clean, and it would provide them with a much-needed supply. As they walked, Jack noticed the landscape was still full of dangers. The ground was rocky, and the shadows of the cliffs loomed overhead. He kept a watchful eye, knowing they had to be careful. Kivral and Lyra moved ahead, looking for any signs of food or threats. After reaching the stream, they filled their containers with water. And Jack taught the Tarvians how to catch fish using simple nets he fashioned from some vines he found nearby. They worked together, laughing as they splashed in the water, their worries forgotten for a moment. Thar stood guard nearby, its massive body ready to protect them. Jack couldn't help but feel a sense of pride watching the Tarvians work together. They were learning, growing stronger with each passing moment. After gathering enough fish and water, the group decided to explore the area for other supplies. Jack led them further into the rocky terrain, keeping his eyes peeled for anything useful. They discovered some edible plants, which Jack carefully identified. The Tarvians were amazed at how he could tell what was safe to eat. "This is great. We can carry this back with us," Kavral said, picking some of the plants and storing them in their packs. As they gathered supplies, Jack took a moment to reflect on their situation. He knew they had to be cautious. The last thing he wanted was to face the creature they had encountered the night before. But now, with Thar by their side, they had a fighting chance. Suddenly, Lyra let out a small gasp. Jack turned to see her pointing at a rocky outcrop in the distance. "What is that?" she asked, her voice filled with wonder. Jack squinted and saw a shimmering object partially buried in the sand. "Let's go check it out," he said, feeling the surge of curiosity. The group approached the outcrop carefully. As they got closer, Jack realized it was part of a broken spaceship. Pieces of metal were scattered everywhere, glinting in the sunlight. His heart raced. This could be a treasure trove of useful materials. "Look at all this," Jack said, excitement bubbling in his voice. "If we can salvage some parts, we might be able to fix my ship." Kavral's eyes lit up. "But is it safe? The Krell could still be nearby." "We'll have to be quick," Jack replied. "But if we work together, we can do this." They split into two groups. Jack and Kavral went to search for useful parts, while Lyra and Thar kept watch. Jack's heart raced as he rummaged through the wreckage. He found wires, metal plates, and even some fuel cells that looked mostly intact. Each item brought him closer to fixing his ship and escaping the planet. As they worked, the sun climbed higher in the sky, and the air grew warmer. Jack felt a growing sense of urgency. They had to finish quickly and get back to the cave before the dangers of the planet returned. After gathering what they could, Jack and Kavral made their way back to the stream where Lyra and Thar were waiting. Lyra's face lit up when she saw the supplies. "You found all of this," she exclaimed, her eyes wide with excitement. "Yeah, we can use these to fix my ship," Jack said, panting slightly from the effort. "We have enough to get started." Thar let out a low growl, indicating it was still alert and ready to protect them. Jack felt grateful for the creature's presence. With Thar's strength and the Tarvians' determination, they would have a fighting chance. As they headed back to the cave, Jack's mind raced with ideas for how to repair the ship. They had come together as a team, each doing their part to survive. The bond between them grew stronger with each challenge they faced, and Jack knew that they would not only escape, but also create a new future together. A new beginning. The sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Jack, Kavral, Lyra, and Thar sat together in the cave, surrounded by the supplies they had gathered. It was a moment of peace before they began the work of repairing the ship. Jack looked at the Tarvians, feeling a mix of gratitude and excitement. "Tomorrow, we start fixing the ship," Jack announced, his voice steady. "If we work together, we can make it fly again." Kavral nodded, his expression serious but hopeful. "We are ready. Together, we can do anything." Lyra's eyes sparkled with enthusiasm. "What do we need to do first?" she asked, eager to help. Jack smiled, feeling inspired by their determination. "First, we need to clean up the area around the ship. We'll make sure it's safe and gather all the parts we found. Then, I'll show you how to put everything back together." Thar let out a low rumble, agreeing with the plan. Jack felt a deep bond forming with the creature. Thar had not only protected them, but had also become a key member of their group. With a strong ally like Thar, they had a much better chance of succeeding. As the night deepened, Jack and the Tarvians shared stories by the small fire they had built. The flames danced, casting flickering shadows on the cave walls. They laughed and joked, their spirits lifted. Jack told them about Earth, his home planet, and the many wonders it held. The Tarvians listened, fascinated by tales of cities with tall buildings, vast oceans, and beautiful forests. Kivral shared stories of Tarvian history. He spoke of their ancestors, who lived in harmony with nature and respected all living things. "We believe that every creature has a purpose," he explained. "Even the Krell, who once attacked our homes, they were simply following their instincts, just like we are." Jack listened intently, appreciating Kivral's wisdom. It reminded him of how important it was to understand each other, even those who seemed different. They were all part of the same universe, each with their own stories and struggles. After a long night of sharing, the group fell asleep, their hearts full of hope for the future. The next morning, the sun rose, bathing the cave in golden light. Jack awoke feeling refreshed and ready to tackle the challenge ahead. "Today is the day," he declared, gathering the group. "Let's get started." They quickly finished breakfast and headed toward the crash site, excitement buzzing in the air. Jack led the way, pointing out the supplies they had gathered and explaining how each part could help fix the ship. "First, we need to clear away any debris," Jack said, kneeling down to pick up pieces of metal. "This will make it easier to see what we need to do." Kivral and Lyra joined him, working together to move the heavy pieces aside. Thar watched over them, ready to defend if any dangers approached. With every piece they cleared, the ship became more visible, and Jack's heart raced with anticipation. After a few hours of hard work, they had cleared a large area around the ship. Jack took a deep breath and inspected the craft. "Okay, now we need to see if we can start the engines," he said, kneeling by the ship's open panel. "I'll show you how it's done." With Kivral and Lyra watching closely, Jack began to connect the wires and fix the fuel cells. He explained each step, and the Tarvians followed along, eager to learn. As they worked together, a sense of teamwork filled the air. After what felt like hours of effort, Jack wiped sweat from his brow and stepped back. "Okay, I think we're ready to test it," he said, a mix of excitement and nervousness in his voice. Everyone stepped back. The Tarvians moved away, their eyes wide with anticipation. Jack took a deep breath, hoping the repairs would work. He pressed the ignition button, and the ship shuddered to life, the engines roaring softly. Lyra squealed with delight, and Kivral laughed. It worked. We did it. Jack's heart soared with joy. We're one step closer to getting off this planet. With the engines running, Jack felt a wave of relief wash over him. But they still had one more important task to complete. They needed to gather more supplies and prepare for the journey home. They worked together, collecting food, water, and anything else they could find. As the sun began to set again, they loaded the last of their supplies into the ship. Jack glanced at the Tarvians, their faces glowing with excitement and hope. "Are you ready?" he asked, feeling the mix of gratitude and pride. "Yes," Kivral replied. "We are ready for a new beginning." Jack smiled, feeling the warmth of their friendship. They had faced danger together, learned from each other, and formed bonds that would last a lifetime. "Let's do this," he said, taking his seat in the pilot's chair. As the ship lifted off the ground, Jack looked at the beautiful planet below them. It was a place filled with danger, but also with hope, friendship, and new beginnings. They had come together against the odds, and now they were heading toward a brighter future. The stars twinkled in the vast sky as they soared through the darkness, ready to explore new worlds and share their stories. Jack felt a deep sense of belonging with his new friends, knowing that together they could face anything the universe threw at them.